Welcome back to DSR, and I'm going to finish off the cantrips. We have 3 books of cantrips left. I'm going to just do these all together because there's only a few each. So there's one more in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. That one they did reprint everything from Elemental Evil Player's Companion. But there's only one more that they added in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Then we have 4 from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and we have one more after that from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. All right, here we go. On the left, you've got my Google Sheet where I rate and rank everything, tier rank everything. I'm slowly working through everything in the game. This will finish off all the cantrips, so that'll be good. I wanted to finally check off. All right, and we're going to go alphabetically. As a reminder, I give an overall rating for spells, kind of like how good I think it is overall, but I think that is so hard to rank something overall without bringing in your bias, both from your, whatever experience you've had, your point of view, and the things you just like. So I also tier rank things based on a role in a party, like which thing I think it's good for. Like you can see some of these are much better for frontliner type functions, and others of these are better for range, and some are controller, and some are scouting, and some are face kind of functionality. So that's the idea. That way you can, instead of like reading when you've got to pick cantrips for your spellcaster or your feat, you don't have to read every cantrip of the game. You can like filter down like to what kind of cantrip you're looking for. Am I looking for something that's more utility based? Am I looking for something more support based or healer or whatever? And then you just filter down to that on this Google sheet, and then you just look at that list and you're golden. This is just openly available, so there's a link to my Google Drive that has this in it right on every video. So it's a community resource. I hope it helps. Please use it. It'd be great. And it's also very important to me that this is correct and useful, not that I'm correct. Okay, I don't care if I'm correct. So if you have feel really strongly that one of these ratings is off, let me know. Let's talk about it. I change ratings all the time based on logic and facts and data, not based on opinion or anything else. So but I love to do, and I change these things regularly based on that. I don't change the same one regularly, but frequently I change something based on enough feedback from people. And on the right, we've got the spells from the spell list in the game rules of D&D Beyond. So we'll start off with Booming Blade, much beloved cantrip. This one was first printed in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and I don't think it's been reprinted since. So I was surprised it didn't get reprinted in the Player's Handbook for 2024. This one is pretty good. In Tier 1, so levels 1 to 4, it doesn't add any damage on the initial hit, but what it does is it causes them to have that secondary effect where they're wreathed in thunder energy, and if they move, and that only counts as not spending movement, they actually have to move to a different spot on the map, right? They have to move to another square. That's what triggers it. So if they stand up, that doesn't trigger it, but if they move to another square, that triggers it. And that secondary damage does 1d8, and it's the same kind of damage, and scales the same way every other damaging cantrip does in the game. Starting at 5th level, though, the initial hit does extra damage, and that scales 1d8 behind every other damage scaling cantrip, right? So at level 5, it'd be 1d8, and all the other cantrips are scaling it, and now at 2 dice, right? And at level 11, the initial damage is 2d8 of Booming Blade, and every other damage dealing cantrip is now 3 dice, and so forth. It doesn't say that it has a range, an auditory range, but thunder damage is thunder. It's sound. It has a range. I usually just use a guide of, right, in the game, there's roughly some ranges that's like roughly 30. You can only be heard by 30 feet away if you're trying to be quiet. But sounds of combat and sounds of thunder, I don't think qualifies as trying to be quiet. So that next range of you can be heard if you're not trying to be quiet, but you're also not trying to be loud, is 60 feet. So I say you can be heard 60 feet away. And if you're trying to be loud, you can hear for 300 feet away. Is the ranges that are in the game. I can go over that another time. It's not quite phrased like that. You kind of have to invert the rules they have. But that's the guide I use. So anything that that does thunder damage, I automatically say it can be heard 60 feet away. So there's upsides and downsides. This has no verbal component, so the spellcasting itself won't break your hidden state. The thunder damage might, though, depending on how the DM rules it. If they're like me, that would automatically break your your hidden state, because thunder is definitely louder than a whisper. It just is, as far as I'm concerned. But other DMs may feel differently. And this is good because the reason why it's still good, even though it does 1 die less of damage than other damage dealing cantrips, is that it's damage on top of your weapon attack. So you still make a regular weapon attack. It does all your regular weapon damage things. It uses your, the base die of the weapon. It uses your ability score modifier from your strength or dexterity. It uses any weapon masteries you have. It uses all these things, plus any magical bonuses of the weapon, and then does this booming blade damage on top of that, which is pretty good. It's also a good strategy for, so this becomes a very good strategy when you have like a skirmisher type build. So you run in, hit them, and then you can get away. And their only choice, if they're trying to try to follow you, is either take damage or somehow make a ranged attack or stand there and do nothing. So it's great for those kind of tactics. And I give it an A overall. It's an A for tanking. This is particularly interesting as a tank because not that you're trying to run in and run out, but you're going to hit them with this. And now if they try to go after anyone else, run after anyone else, they're going to take the additional thunder damage. So it's actually pretty nice for tanking to keep them in place. Good for frontliners just to add straight damage, and good for skirmishers to add damage and to prevent them from chasing you. It's got that control effect, and if you're just using it for a control effect, I kind of give it a C level control effect because it doesn't actually reduce their movement, and the damage isn't very big, right? You're talking 1d8 in levels 1 to 4, which is not a lot. 2d8 starts to feel like a little more of a penalty, and then when you get to 3d8 and 4d8, it's a decent amount, right? But even 4d8 damage is an average of 18 damage, and we're talking tier 4, so you're fighting creatures that are like CR 17 and higher. So they're probably not going to care that much about 18 points of thunder damage. I don't know. It really depends. So it's an okay control effect, but when you add everything together, this is an A tier cantrip. Next, we have Encode Thoughts. This is the only cantrip that was added in the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and it's kind of a strange spell. It has only somatic components. You can cast this while stealth, although I don't know why you would. It lasts 8 hours, and when you cast it, it takes a memory, one of your memories, and turns it into this kind of semi-solid, weightless object that you can carry and move. But otherwise, if you don't take it and move it with you, it just kind of floats wherever it's left in the air, I guess. So it's a strange spell. If you cast Encode Thoughts while you're doing Detect Thoughts or Modify Memory, like kind of messing with somebody else's memories, then you can actually encode their thought into one of these little memory strands. And then anyone else who has this cantrip can also decode it, right? They can take a memory strand and then decode it. So you can't like designate specific targets, like people that you want to be able to read it. So it's not very good for like passing hidden messages because anybody who has this cantrip can now decode it. I guess probably the biggest protection against anyone just reading the memory that you encoded is that this cantrip is pretty bad, like pretty edge case useful. And so most people won't have it. And that's the biggest protection against it. Although wizards can swap it in at any time, right? On a long rest, what wizards can swap their cantrips to anything else, and this is on the wizard cantrip list. In fact, it's only on the wizard list. So wizards can just swap it in, read any encoded memory strand they find. Although it only lasts 8 hours, so you can't actually complete a long rest before you read it. I don't know. It's a cool little spell. Seems fun. More of a plot device than anything. I have often thought, like, it's one I want to take because it just seems cool, but I cannot figure out how to make good use of it in a real way, right? Without the DM kind of creating the plot around this thing, right? Just as a player, like, how would I initiate a situation where this is going to be really useful? So if you have ideas, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear how to make this thing cool and useful. Next is Green Flame Blade, another much beloved cantrip. This one was also introduced in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Very much like Booming Blades, functions the same way. It makes a weapon attack as part of it. It adds some stuff on top of it, somatic and material components only. Now, this one does not, at least the way that I rule it, does not automatically break your stealth. There's no verbal component. It's flame, and flames can be quiet, although they cause light. I don't know. Some DMs may say, well, that's going to break it. Okay. Well, the point is actually, since you're making a weapon attack, it's going to break after this anyway, right? So you don't have to worry about it. This is not going to break your hidden state until after the attack and the cantrip resolve. So it's okay. This one, although the secondary damage isn't applied to the same creature, the secondary damage actually happens right away, and it applies to a different creature within 5 feet. So it's a little bit of like a cleave. So if you actually get this on a class that has Great Axe or Halberd Mastery, so you can cleave with those, you can hit that second target twice, once with the flames from this, and then hit them again with the cleave weapon attack. So really causing a lot of secondary damage. And the secondary damage on this one actually scales. Like at before 5th level, the secondary damage is equal to your spellcasting modifier. So it may not be very, very high, but after 5th level, at 5th level and higher, it's now adding D8 damage dice. So at 5th level, the secondary damage would be 1d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier, and then it would be 2d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier, and then 3d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier at level 17. So the secondary damage is decent, especially when it's free on top of a weapon attack. The damage dice to the main target is 0 until level 5, and then it's 1d8, 2d8, 3d8, level 17. Scales the exact same way. So on this one, the damage dice on both sides, both the first target and the second target, is identical. It's just that the second target is taking an extra number of points of damage equal to your spellcasting ability modifier. So this one's great to have as well. On these kind of builds, I like to have Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade and just adjust which one I'm using based on the needs of that particular situation, right? If there's just one there and I may not want them to run around or move anything, then it's Booming Blade. If there are two next to each other, I almost will always go for Green Flame Blade unless they have some sort of resistance to fire damage. Both of these are great, and perhaps two of the best things that came out of this whole book. That and the first version of the Blade Singer, which was a little rough. And I lied. I almost forgot about Infestation. This was another cantrip added in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Brand new and introduced there. But it's easy to forget about because I don't think I think I've seen it cast once or twice in all the 11,000 hours that I've DM'd 5th edition. So not used very often, which I think is unfortunate, right? Because it's actually pretty fun. It's not only a okay damage dealing, right? It's D6s, which is on the lower end of cantrips. But it forces a 5-foot movement, which means if they're on a mount, it might force them off the mount, not guaranteed, depending on the size of the mount, right? It might force them off the mount, or if they're in a spike growth, it's going to force an extra movement of 2d4 damage, or if they're, on the edge of some sort of area effect, a hazard, or spirit guardians, or anything like that, it could randomly force them into that area, or if they're standing on the edge of a cliff, force them off a cliff, right? So you're going to do damage and potentially move them 5 feet. Now the movement is random, and that's probably where this is less popular. So they're not going to necessarily go exactly the way you want them to go, but just there's a lot of situations where you can make sure that anywhere they go is going to be pretty bad. And on top of that, you're going to deal some damage, right? It's a Constitution saving throw, which isn't like the best one to target, but it's actually not as bad as I think most people say. Like a lot of creatures don't have really high Constitution saving throws. It's just that they don't often have like a plus 0 modifier on their Constitution saving throw, or a negative one. I don't think any monster I've seen has a negative Constitution modifier. A lot of them have a +1 or +2, but most of them don't go higher than +2, right? That's not very common. So it's actually okay to target a Constitution saving throw. So this is a decent spell, and I think it's worth taking. I wouldn't take this as my primary attack spell, but if I have other things to stack with it, I would take it. So this is going to be a B. It's got a little bit of, as far as cantrips go, it's got a B control effect, forcing them to move, and B for being a range damage dealing effect. Yeah, especially if you build around it, it's easily an A or better. Next, we have Lightning Lure. This is back to Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. This is a fun one. It's a lot like Thorn Whip, but it's available to a lot more classes than Thorn Whip is. Thorn Whip is druids only. This one's available to artificers, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Now, artificers also have access to Thorn Whip, unlike what I just said. So druids and artificers have access to Thorn Whip, which is better than this in most ways. This one, verbal component only. It's still your action. It's a strength saving throw, whereas Thorn Whip is an attack roll. A lot of times attack rolls are better, but not always, right? There are plenty of creatures that don't have high strength scores, especially things that are small in size, small or tiny, right? The smaller they are, it is far more likely they have a low strength score. In fact, like tiny sized creatures often have a strength score in like 3 or less. And if they're bigger than medium size, they often have a higher strength score than, 14, 15, 16. So just based on size, you might, and if you have this and Thorn Whip, you might choose, if they're really big, I'm going to use Thorn Whip. And if they're really small, I'm going to use Lightning Lure because I have a very high chance to fail that, right? Something with a 3 strength score has a -4. Yeah, -4 on that save. So if your saving throw spell save DC is 17, they cannot save against that. Yes, and I'll remind you that getting a nat 20 on a saving throw does not guarantee success. Nat 20s only have an effect on attack rolls. So yeah, if they can't, if they have a -4 and your spell save DC is 17, they cannot, even if they roll a 20, they would get a net 16, which means they cannot save no matter what. Guaranteed pull effect and guaranteed damage. The damage is D8, so it's kind of the medium range of attack cantrips for damage. It's lightning, which is there are some creatures that are resistant or immune. It's not very common though, so this one's fine to use, and it pulls them 10 feet. The pull effects are not very common, so that's a nice thing to have in your repertoire. So if I have space for 4 attack cantrips, this might be one of the ones I pick as my 4th option if I don't have Thorn Whip, right? I wouldn't usually take this and Thorn Whip. Although if I'm an armorer, I don't know. I don't know if I'd take this and Thorn Whip if I was an armorer either, right? Because the armorer does want to pull more, but they've got the Dreadnought weapon now, which can do a push or pull. So I'm not sure I'd take Thorn Whip or Lightning Lure, either of those on the armorer at all. Yeah, probably wouldn't. So overall, I'm going to give this one a C. It's a D for range damage. The range is only 15 feet, very small range, and they only take the damage if they end up next to you, which is strange because if they're within 15 feet and they fail the saving throw, you pull them 10 feet, they're going to end up next to you and take the damage. You don't have to pull them the full 10 feet because it says up to 10 feet, so you only pull them 5 feet. But if you do that, they take no damage, and I don't know why you'd want to do that. Like, why pull them if not pull them the full 10 feet and then deal some damage? It's kind of a strange spell. Let's move on to the next one. All right, so Magic Stone, Mold Earth, those were both already covered as they were released in the Elemental Evils player companion. So we move on to the next new cantrip that was introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is Primal Savagery. This is a druid spell only, somatic component only. So if you cast it, it wouldn't break your stealth, although druids aren't often doing that. And it is an attack cantrip. It's a melee attack. It does 1d10 acid damage. Acid is very rarely resisted or immune. There are a few, but it's really low percentages. And it's just a 1d10. That's it. 1d10 per and then scaling at regular cantrip damage levels. And that's kind of it. There's no rider. There's no secondary effect. It's it's basically the same thing as Chill Touch, right? Chill Touch is 1d10. It's a better damage type. Acid is better than Necrotic, but Necrotic isn't often what is it? Probably 10% of the monster manual or higher is resistant to Necrotic. Like a lot of undead and fiends are resistant to Necrotic. That would be the reason you would take this over that, but this is Druid, right? So Druids don't usually have access to Chill Touch, and if you really want a good melee attack that does more damage, I would probably, I don't know. I'm not sure I would take this, right? Unless you build around acid, this isn't very good because it has no secondary rider effect like most cantrips, right? Chill Touch has a secondary rider; they can't heal. So this has got nothing. So it's not the best damage die. It's not, and it's a good damage type. So it's a C. This is a C for a melee damaging effect. It doesn't have any rider that's going to help you like Booming Blade does if you're a tank. No secondary rider to help you get out of like melee if you're a skirmisher. It's just kind of too bland, and there's so many other better options that this is probably not a good one unless you're like I said, unless you've got a specific build in mind for this, which I have seen and you can do, and that's true of any of these things, right? These ratings are not this is what you're stuck with, and so you should probably never use anything below B. It just means if it's below a B, you're gonna have to work harder to make this more useful. And there are plenty of people, a lot of people can do that. A lot of people are good with the, being creative with the mechanics and builds. And so you could easily make this into an A depending on how you build around it. But on average, if you just take this and don't build around it, not great. It's a C. And the last one we're going to cover today is Sword Burst, which was also introduced in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Had Xanathar's on the brain there. It is one of the few AoE cantrips. This one is point blank AoE, so it just emanates from you, 5 feet. It's 1d6 force damage and then scaling at the regular levels. It's a verbal component only, and it's a dex saving throw. So it's very similar to Thunderclap. Thunderclap is a constitution saving throw and does thunder damage and then is also automatically heard 100 feet away. So this one doesn't have the auto heard, automatically heard 100 feet away aspect. So it can be quiet. I mean, it's going to break your stealth, but when you cause something to, well, see, it's attack roll or make a cast a spell with a verbal component. Yeah, it's going to break your stealth, right? Because of the verbal component. So it's on the weak side for the damage. Word of Radiance is a lot better. If you really want to do point blank AoE damage, Word of Radiance, if you can get access to it, is far better because that one is a d6 of damage. It's radiant damage, which is almost as good as force damage, but it has no friendly fire, right? And that is the problem with both Sword Burst and Thunderclap is they have friendly fire. So if you're on the front line, you might think, oh, do some extra, AoE damage is a good thing. Probably not if you have any allies standing next to you. So I hope that they reprint this one soon, and that when they do reprint it, they make it better in some way, right? Like if you're going to be stuck and can't use and they don't remove friendly fire from it, then this and Thunderclap should probably do more damage than Word of Radiance. Now they already reprinted Thunderclap in the 2024 Player's Handbook, which is unfortunate because they missed an opportunity to do something to make that one better than, right, at least equal to Word of Radiance, right? Thunderclap should at least have done a D8 if it's not going to remove friendly fire, right? So that in some situations, Thunderclap is better. In other situations, Word of Radiance is better. But for all of these point blank AoEs, as of right now, Word of Radiance is the absolute way to go if you want to kind of lean into that. Now, it's still not a lot of damage, but if you can start stacking, you get higher levels, start increasing the number of dice of damage, and then like if you're a cleric for Word of Radiance, you get, to add your wisdom modifier to the damage of your cantrips. You start doing things like that, and it's a good chunk of damage that you could add on top of your spirit guardians, right? So it works pretty well. This one, it's like, I guess a wizard now, like a blade singer, you could initiate Cacophonic Shield, which is a emanation damage dealing effect like spirit guardians. Then you run in on subsequent rounds and you are making one weapon attack and then replacing one of them with a sword burst for extra AoE damage around you. That could be a compelling way to like do a lot of damage to a group of creatures. Like maybe you're just gonna hack your way through a bunch of minions to get to the boss. Well, that would be a great way to hack through it. So you're dealing damage with your Cacophonic Shield, and you're dealing more damage with Sword Burst, and then you're hitting with a sword attack or a weapon attack as well on top of that. So there are situations where this is good. It has to be those kind of situations. I'm gonna give it a B because on the relative scale of AoE cantrips, this is the middle of the two, right? Word of Radiance is the A, Sword Burst is the B, Thunderclap is a C. Now, somebody mentioned that they have other uses for Thunderclap where they want that sound effect and they don't even care about the damage, right? Like they want to create a distraction for the party. Like some enemies are coming towards the party and going to find them. This person is a rogue, runs over here, while stealth, casts Thunderclap far away from the party, but within 100 feet of the people who are going to find the party, so that they hear that Thunderclap, go running towards that. The rogue then re-stealths, runs away, and you've now distracted that patrol from finding the party. Great creative stuff. I love that, and it's a good, point or example of how you can take something that isn't very good, and if you're creative, find really like S tier uses for it. Right? I think you could probably find S tier uses for almost anything in the game. Like in just the right situation, this thing is the perfect solution. Maybe not Encode Thoughts. I don't know. Maybe. Like maybe. If you can think of the S tier situation for Encode Thoughts, please put it in the comments. I want to know. All right, that's it for cantrips. I've now covered every cantrip that's core rules, expanded rules, even the 2014 expanded rule cantrips that aren't reprinted yet, which I allow all of that stuff. Any 2014 content that hasn't been reprinted yet, you can use in my games. I know some DMs do that. Not everyone, but you can easily filter in the Google Sheet to filter out that stuff if you don't want to allow it. All right. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful. And remember, if you don't have enough D&D in your life, you can look at the descriptions in my videos and find links to join my Discord server or find me on Start Playing Games if you want to play. If you're a DM looking for players, you can join my Discord and post your games in my Looking for Group channel. And remember to be cool when you play D&D because this is a game. And the only point of it is to have fun with your friends, right? So be cool. Catch you next time.